Hello, my name is Josh from Cyclone's Oz, and today we're going to continue looking at the Gulf of Carpentaria system. I've got a lot of details to present to the audience today. We've got a very good idea on where this system is going to be tracking, its expected peak intensity, and also its landfall location, and therefore I can give a really good idea of what the impacts that we can expect around the Gulf of Carpentaria and then inland to the Northern Territory and Western Australia are going to be over the next week or so. So if you live in basically tropical Australia, excluding far north Queensland, it is a very good idea to pay attention to what's going to be said in this update, because it is the latest forecast based on 4 major forecast models. So we're looking at the system right now on the satellite imagery, taking a look at it swirling around quite nicely, especially in the mid and the upper levels, which means that there's good rotation from the low pressure system with all this cloud activity here. The lower levels is a bit of a different story. When you're talking about surface level, there are some strong westerly winds on the northern side, but I'm really not seeing any easterly winds on the southern side, which is what I'd expect to be seeing from a tropical low starting to develop somewhere around Catherine, or maybe a little bit further inland in towards Arnhem Land and Kakadu, that sort of area. But we're not really seeing this very tight lower level rotation that I would have thought we would have seen, probably not now, but definitely by tomorrow as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, because come tomorrow it's going to be moving closer towards Groote Island and the Gulf of Carpentaria. So it's still got about 24 to 36 hours to really wrap this circulation up, and it will do that as well. We'll be watching the wind observations today, and if we get any drastic developments in the storm, I'll be giving an evening update on this system as well. That's enough yabber on the current conditions. We're going to take a look at the wind forecast right now before we take a look at rainfall and also the current rain radar, because Darwin is being drenched right now. They've had over 300 millimeters in the past, I think 36 hours. They're getting quite a lot of rainfall up there, and it's a lot more than I did initially expect. But taking a look at the wind forecast, it's very much reciprocated from the satellite imagery. There's hardly any lower level rotation or tight lower level rotation yet, but as we get into Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning, we're going to see this low pressure system, this broad low pressure area emerge off Groote Island. I apologize to the birds, sorry, I'm in a very bird friendly area by the sounds of things, but we're going to see this low pressure system move just towards the south of Groote Island and then into the Gulf of Carpentaria. Well, it will slowly organize itself on Wednesday and Thursday. It really struggles, actually, an emphasis on the really there, because it really doesn't have a fun time in the Gulf of Carpentaria, taking a full 2 days to properly organize. But once it does, by around Friday morning, it looks like it might briefly attain cyclone winds as it makes landfall on, I think it's Robinson River, just through here, or just towards the west of Robinson River, as a very weak tropical cyclone, probably only just at Category 1 status. We're seeing the strongest winds towards the eastern side of the storm centre, so we're talking about the strongest winds probably from Mornington Island and also parts of the Gulf of Carpentaria coastline on Queensland side. And that means we'll be seeing some pretty strong wind gusts from, I reckon, anywhere south of that on the Queensland coastline. But we'll also be seeing some very gusty storms blow ashore as this cyclone or very strong tropical low makes landfall on the Northern Territory, Queensland border. So anywhere through here will likely also receive some pretty significant wind gusts. You're talking wind gusts probably averaging about 70 to 80 kilometres an hour, but you might get 1 or 2 stronger wind gusts in the form of squall lines associated with this tropical cyclone that could approach 100 or 110 kilometres an hour. So there's still the chance of some pretty significant wind damage, which could cause damage to trees up here, and also some flimsy built sheds and so forth, or property that's not built up to cyclone standard. But I doubt that that'd be any property up here. You're talking the Gulf of Carpentaria. It's a very cyclone prone region of Australia, and a Category 1 cyclone is very much nothing to these people. It's the rainfall threat that we are still most concerned about with this system. The GFS model has a very similar picture, if not absolutely identical. It doesn't look the same, but I mean, the low pressure system's in a very similar area. It's still making landfall Friday evening or early Saturday morning as what could be a weak tropical cyclone, probably of Category 1 proportions here, with the worst of the winds associated with this storm on the eastern side of the system, but then will blow through into the Northern Territory. And also the Axis G3 model as well it's got a similar picture in terms of location and also timing, making that landfall Friday evening, but it's still the bullish model in terms of maximum wind speeds, and that's because the Axis G3 model having a convective convective bias, as we've found out in recent videos, it's able to blow this system up a lot better because it's going to be a very thunderstormy system. There's going to be a lot of thunderstorms around the center, and thus the Access G3 model reckons that this system is going to be a lot stronger than what it actually is. And that's why we got those outlandish predictions with Cyclone Kirrily and Cyclone Jasper as they were forming. It's because the Access G3 looks at the thunderstorms and thinks, wow, that is a strong cyclone, even if it isn't organized at all. And that was definitely the case with Cyclone Kirrily. As she developed, she was not an organized system at all, but the Access G3 model thought that she was. So as this system makes landfall, it still could boast wind gusts approaching 125 to 150 kilometers an hour. And those are the winds that I would class as very destructive. They could cause some pretty significant damage at this point. They can rip trees out of the ground. They can cause damage to power poles. They will definitely be giving sheds a hard time up here as well. Homes might be better off. If you've got a tin roof, though, it's probably an idea to just make sure that everything's safe and sound with it. I'm sure insurance will cover any damage associated with this tropical cyclone. I don't see why not. But yeah, the rainfall threat is definitely the most significant risk with this system. I'm going to take a look at that right now. Peak rainfall accumulations, we'll mainly look at the Eastern BF forecast model. You can see actually on the rainfall 3-hour accumulation that this is going to be a very messy system. It's not going to be well organized at all. What I'm expecting this to look like is just a bunch of thunderstorms in the Gulf of Carpentaria that are very slowly rotating and swirling around a common center, which will likely be just very close to Groot Island for the entirety of the storm's life over water, but it's definitely not going to be a pretty tropical cyclone, that's for sure. Now, over the next 24 hours, we can expect an additional 50 to 100 millimeters for areas around Darwin, and then into the Arnhem Land and the northern reaches of the Northern Territory around Catherine and so forth. You could be seeing 50 millimeters or so. Over the next 3 days, that maybe doubles those rainfall totals, but then, yeah, quite a lot of rainfall starts to accumulate over parts of the Gulf of Carpentaria and also onto the Cape York Peninsula as well. They're not spared from the rainfall, but it is going to be reserved mainly for the coastal regions, where it could be seeing accumulations between 100 and 250 millimeters. And the further south you get in the Cape York Peninsula, and also the closer you get to the Queensland Northern Territory border around Burketon, Gregory, anywhere north of Mount Isa and towards the west of Croydon, in this sort of area here, expect at least 200 millimeters, with areas on the coast expecting up to 400 or 500 millimeters in one or two locations. And 400 millimeters is the type of rainfall that I could class as dangerous, and it could cause some very significant flooding from the passage of this tropical, well, it'll be a tropical low at this point as it moves inland, but very heavy rainfall, and also quite a lot of it is expected with the passage of this tropical cyclone / tropical low. It's not going to be a really strong tropical cyclone in terms of maximum sustained winds, and I'm still 50-50 on whether it'll actually peak out as a tropical cyclone at all, but the rainfall threat is very much set in stone at this point. And for locations between Arakan down towards Croydon or Georgetown, anywhere north of Mount Isa and then inland into the Northern Territory, including Tennant Creek, Corella Creek, and maybe across to Elliot and Borula over here, you guys should definitely be looking at preparing for a rainfall event where you could be seeing up to 200 or 250 millimeters in a 24-hour period. And for regions closer to the coastline, you're probably talking closer to 500 millimeters. It will be a wet system. It will push rivers beyond their minor flood levels and possibly up towards the moderate and major flood levels as well. And yeah, it's just going to be all around quite a wet system. The GFS forecast model, which is what we've been looking at, it's quite an ugly forecast model, might I add, for the past minute. That's got a fairly similar story to the Eastern RBF. The only model that's really outlandish in terms of maximum rainfall is the Access G3 model, but once again, being a convective forecast model, it doesn't really do a good job for tropical cyclones, but it does a good job for their remnant lows, and it also does a good job for thunderstorms, and that's important, and I'll get to that in about a minute's time. But you can see they're calling for basically double the rainfall accumulation on what the other forecast models were calling for. And what you will notice is that mainland Northern Territory, even Groot Island as well, as you get inland on Groot Island and also up towards Arnhem Land and Nullarbor, there's not too much in terms of rainfall that's actually over land. It just remains on the coastline. And yeah, as a common theme between all of the forecast models, and that is also likely to be what actually happens. The Access G3, just for fun's sake, has a maximum accumulation of about 1,250 millimeters just outside of Burketown. That's no chance in hell of happening. That's absolutely outlandish rainfall accumulations. To produce something like that, this system would have to sit on top of one location for about 3 days straight, and I cannot see that happening whatsoever. It's not a likely system to stall, however, it will be slow moving. Now, you know how I said that this is important for the convective forecast, the axis is a good convective model, and that's good for thunderstorms and tropical lows? Well, it looks like the remnant energy of this storm is going to manage to track through the Northern Territory and then into Western Australia by around early next week as we get towards Monday and Tuesday. It moves into Western Australia, south of Balgo Hill and Fitzroy Crossing, and then inland towards communities such as Warburton and Lannister. And yeah, it looks like it's still holding on strong here. It could also have some pretty strong thunderstorms. It will have plenty of energy to blow up some very significant thunderstorms. It will be in a very favourable environment. And this is where we're going to be seeing rainfall accumulations inland, a very widespread swath of around 150 millimetres plus in desert communities as well. So you're talking about half a year to maybe 8 months worth of rainfall for some locations here, or the entirety of the wet season's accumulation for these places. So expect some pretty significant flooding through here. Roads will certainly be closed. So if you're a heavy vehicle mover or a trucker moving through central Australia, come around next week, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, conditions are going to be quite interesting in terms of flooded roads and closed roads here, which will be very annoying to a lot of heavy vehicle owners through here. But yeah, you can see a lot of rainfall is expected. I think the axis is still on the upper echelon in terms of maximum rainfall through here. I don't see how 450 millimetres can fall outside of Alice Springs. But when you're talking rainfall totals about 300 to 400 millimetres around Tennant Creek, that's certainly plausible as well. And into the more tropical heart of the Northern Territory, 300 to 400 millimetres is possible as well. And that will likely happen all in a 24-hour period. But I'm just a little bit sceptical in terms of maximum rainfall as you get down towards Kiwakara or Docker River. I think 250 millimetres is the absolute most that they'll receive, but still that's a lot of rainfall, and like I said, flooding is expected in that situation. And it's also a very similar amount of rainfall along, well, maybe not the GFS, but the Eastern WF model also expects this system to track across the Northern Territory and back into Western Australia, up into the Kimberley region, which we'll take a look at in just a second. The GFS doesn't really call for the tropical low to have any energy once it gets into the Northern Territory's heart, so it's not calling for this widespread rainfall situation, but still though, the Eastern WF is calling for it, and that we will take a look at that now. If it was to take this more northerly track option where it moves up towards the Kimberley region, which is slightly more unlikely, but again, it's a relatively possible scenario as well, along with the Access G3's forecast. It moves up towards Broome and so forth and dumps quite a lot of rainfall there too. We could be seeing accumulations approach 400 to 500 millimetres here, and certainly the chance of flooding around Broome or Derby or Fitzroy Crossing is also very possible as we get into later next week. So all around going to be quite a wet week for the northern parts of Australia, and also a little bit of rain and thunderstorm activity expected for Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. It's been ages since we've properly covered thunderstorms on this channel, and I will get back into that, maybe even tonight, so stay tuned for that. And if you haven't already been, please do consider subscribing for that. We could actually take a look at that right now. So over the past 24 hours, there hasn't really been too much in the way of severe thunderstorm activity for parts of Queensland. There's been some strong storms around Mount Isa and so forth, but it looks like they're dying off now. We've got a bit of an onshore flow for locations between Mackay, Rockhampton, and then maybe even down towards Brisbane and Gympie as well. This is a 12-hour loop that we're looking at, so we're really getting a good picture of what the last half a day was. But I think it's going to be tonight where we really start to see some thunderstorms really start to fire up. Yeah, Tuesday evening, I think I said yesterday, we're seeing some strong thunderstorms probably fire up across central Queensland. Some of these could go severe, and also some pretty significant rainfall and thunder showers for areas around Mackay, Rockhampton and Bundaberg as well in central Queensland. You'll be seeing quite a bit of rainfall on that as well. And then the passage of a cool change / cold front moves through Tuesday, and that could also spark some thunderstorm activity Wednesday and Thursday for New South Wales and also parts of Queensland, more so on Thursday for Queensland before that really moves away. And that's another thing as well that I'd like to talk about. Catastrophic fire dangers today for Victoria, yeah, especially in towards the east or the west of Victoria rather. They've got some very high fire dangers, the worst fire danger since I believe the Black Summer bushfires of 2020 and 2019, and I do believe there's also 60 schools closed in Victoria right now because of this catastrophic fire danger. So total fire bans are in place. There's no excuse to having a fire, especially in conditions like this. I mean, who wants to be running a log fire when it's going to be 37 or 38 degrees Celsius for some of these locations? That's some hot weather for Victoria, but it looks like they ease off by around Wednesday and Thursday, and they pull out into about South Australia and New South Wales. But yeah, also tomorrow could also see some pretty significant fire dangers too into Wednesday, especially for the northern parts of Victoria, but it looks like it's just going to be catastrophic fire danger for today for some parts of Victoria, and that's basically it in terms of significant fire weather. I mean, it goes without saying that Western Australia and South Australia are mostly dominated by extreme to catastrophic fire dangers, hot, dry, and also quite windy in some locations. I mean, it's been blowing its guts out this morning here where I'm located, and I'm coastal, so I dread to hear what it's like for locations in the hills around Perth. But yeah, definitely this cool change is very welcome. I'm loving wearing a jumper this morning. It's very much welcome down in Perth, and it looks like the cool weather might stay with us for another couple of days until Thursday, when, I mean, look at this, it gets blisteringly hot once again, 44 or 45 for Gingin by the looks of things, and then yeah, down in towards the hills, 42 or 43, and I believe it's going to be a little bit of a wetter heat than usual on the coast, 30% humidity. I know that doesn't sound like much, it's certainly not tropical humidity, but 30% humidity with 41 degrees Celsius temperatures. You're looking at a heat index approaching 43 or 44, so it's going to be quite nasty on Thursday, and I believe Thursday night as well, it's going to be really hot. Oh dear, and I've just cited Friday as well, but it looks like that heat moves inland by then. And I also believe next Monday is also, oh my goodness, next Monday is going to be a scorcher. Now you can see that this part of the video is very much unscripted, and I'm really much finding this out just for myself right now. 49 up towards Kalbarri. That is some blisteringly hot days up there. It's not too much for the northern parts of Western Australia, but anywhere that sees 45 south of around, I guess, Carnarvon, you're pushing a pretty hot day there. So hopefully we get some reprieve from the heat. Once again, February, hottest month of the year for Western Australia as a whole, and this heat is certainly not unexpected. It happens every single year, but it is very much unwelcome in the amount of heat that we've just been getting for parts of Western Australia. So sorry for the rest of Australia for completely alienating you for the last 2 minutes. On that note, I'm going to end off this video. If you did enjoy it, then please do consider leaving a like, and also subscribe to get access to future updates. Click the join button down below if you'd like to show your support monetarily, and also leave a comment telling me how I can improve, or just give some general feedback or a weather report for your location. But that is all from me, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.